She filed a restraining order claiming I was emotionally abusive just for questioning her $2,300 designer bag. So I went silent, cut off every card, canceled her lease, froze the accounts, and 72 hours later her own lawyer was begging me to take her back. I'm 34, and if you told me a few years ago I'd end up in court because of the woman I thought I was going to marry, I would have laughed. Her name was Madison, 29. When we first met, she was magnetic. She had this way of pulling people toward her, charming, lively, the kind of person who always seemed to brighten the room. I won't lie, I was taken in. But beneath the sparkle, there was something else, an appetite for luxury and appearances that never seemed to end. I ignored it in the beginning. She'd max out a credit card, and I'd pay it off. She'd forget to cover her rent, and I'd step in. When her birthday rolled around and she insisted on a trip to Miami, even though she didn't have a steady income, I rationalized it. She'll get on her feet eventually, I told myself. That line became my excuse more times than I care to admit. For almost 4 years, I played the part of the responsible one. She was the dreamer, the social butterfly. I told myself opposites attract. But opposites can also erode you, one compromise at a time. The turning point came over something that, on paper, might look small, but to me, it was the final straw. I noticed a $2,300 charge on my Amex. A single purchase. When I asked about it, she casually said she'd bought herself a designer bag. What got me wasn't the purchase itself, though that was insane money to drop without a word. It was the timing. Just a week earlier, she'd been crying about her student loan payment, saying she didn't know how she was going to manage it. She had me pacing the apartment, running numbers in my head, trying to figure out how to ease her stress. And then she does this. So, I confronted her. Calmly. No yelling. No accusations. Just a simple question. Why would you do that when you've been telling me you can't even pay your bills? That's when she flipped. You're always watching me, she shouted. You treat me like a child. This is financial abuse. At first, I thought she was exaggerating in the heat of the moment. People say dramatic things in arguments. But the look in her eyes, it wasn't just anger. It was calculation. Like she'd been waiting for me to question her, waiting to use it as ammunition. I tried to de-escalate. I told her it wasn't about control, it was about responsibility. That didn't matter. She stormed out, muttering under her breath that I'd regret treating her like some dependent. The rest of the night, I sat there wondering how we'd gotten here. I'd always wanted to believe in her, to believe she'd grow past this fixation with money and status. But deep down, I knew the truth. She had no intention of changing. And I was about to find out just how far she was willing to go to keep her grip on the lifestyle she'd built at my expense. 2 weeks after that argument about the bag, I was at my place going through emails when I got a knock at the door. A man in a gray suit asked my name, handed me a packet, and walked away. I opened it, and my stomach dropped. It was a temporary restraining order. According to Madison's sworn statement, I was controlling, emotionally manipulative, and abusive through financial coercion. She claimed I monitored her spending, berated her about money, and made her feel unsafe. Her evidence? Screenshots of texts where I'd asked why she kept overdrafting her account. An email where I suggested she cut down on delivery apps. That was it. No threats, no name-calling, nothing like that. Just me pointing out the obvious. And yet, there it was, in black and white, stamped and signed. No contact, 200 yards distance, effective immediately. I sat there in disbelief. This wasn't just an argument blown out of proportion. This was a strategy, a weapon. Now, most people in my shoes might have panicked. Maybe reached out to her, tried to talk it through, begged for a resolution. Some might have fought tooth and nail to contest it. But me? I decided to play it differently. I went completely silent. No texts, no calls, no emails, no chance for her to twist my words. If she wanted distance, she'd get distance, but with consequences. By Friday, I'd made my move. First, I pulled her from my health insurance plan. She'd been riding along as a dependent, but that was gone in a single phone call. Then I canceled every secondary credit card she had access to. She'd racked up charges before, but now those doors were closed. Next, I froze the joint savings account. She'd dipped into it more than once under the guise of emergencies, but those withdrawals were over. Saturday, I went down to the dealership and removed myself as guarantor on her car lease. The manager told me she'd need to qualify on her own within 30 days or risk repossession. With her credit score, that was going to be a nightmare. Sunday, I took care of the smaller but still important details. Streaming services, food delivery accounts, the emergency allowance I'd set to auto-transfer each month. It all got cut off. I documented everything, saved every receipt, every confirmation email. I wasn't angry. Honestly, I felt clear, like the fog I'd been living in was finally lifting. If she wanted to paint me as controlling, I'd let her. But I was going to comply with that order to the letter. No contact. No involvement. No more financial lifeline. By the end of the weekend, my part was done. The ball was in her court now, and I knew the silence would drive her crazy. Madison had built her entire routine, her entire identity, around the lifestyle I funded. Rooftop brunches, shopping trips, designer makeup hauls. All of it relied on me quietly footing the bill. And just like that, I was gone from the equation. I figured it was only a matter of time before the silence broke. I didn't know exactly how, but I knew Madison, and she wasn't built to handle consequences. What I didn't expect was how quickly the cracks would start to show. By Monday morning, the silence finally broke. My phone buzzed, and I saw an unfamiliar number. When I picked up, a man introduced himself as Madison's attorney. His name was Kenneth, and his voice had that polished, rehearsed tone you hear from people who spend their days smoothing over disasters. "Mr. Larson," he began, "my client is experiencing some unforeseen hardships due to your abrupt financial decisions." I almost laughed. Unforeseen hardships? She'd taken me to court, cut me off with a restraining order, and now her lawyer was complaining that I'd cut her off financially. The irony was almost too much. I kept my tone calm. Per the restraining order, I'm not allowed to have any contact or relationship with her. Financial support would be contact. I'm complying 100%. Silence. A long one. Then he tried again, this time with a softer pitch. "Perhaps we can work something out?" I didn't hesitate. "No need. I'm enjoying this distance. Tell her thanks." And then I hung up. That was the moment it hit me. I wasn't trapped anymore. I wasn't responsible for patching her holes, cleaning up her chaos, or pretending everything was fine. The law she'd weaponized against me had become my shield. But Madison? She wasn't handling it well. By midweek, her Instagram, which used to be filled with rooftop brunches, shopping bags, and perfectly curated selfies, shifted into something else entirely. Passive-aggressive quotes about toxic men, posts about financial abuse, and reclaiming independence. The same followers who once commented heart emojis and fire reactions now saw her spiraling in real time. Then came the messages. Friends of hers, some I'd met, others I hadn't, started reaching out from random numbers. "How could you leave her like this? She's struggling, and you're just watching? She told us you've been controlling her for years." Every single one, I screenshotted and forwarded to my lawyer. Harassment through third parties. A direct violation of her own restraining order. It was almost too easy. The shift in tone was whiplash. One week, she was flaunting her lifestyle. The next, she was scrambling to play victim while the cracks showed everywhere. What struck me most wasn't even the lies. It was the desperation. She was so used to me being the safety net that the second it vanished, her whole world collapsed. She wasn't just losing money. She was losing the image she'd built, the audience she'd curated, the illusion that she was living the dream. And I hadn't done a thing except follow the rules. For the first time in years, I felt like I was standing on solid ground. No drama I couldn't walk away from. No guilt trips I had to absorb. Just quiet. But I also knew Madison. She wasn't the type to take a hit and walk away. If her lawyer was already calling, if her friends were already circling, it was only a matter of time before she doubled down. The next big crack didn't come from Madison. It came from her mom. Denise had always been around in the background. Polite enough when we first met, but there was this undertone of entitlement that felt familiar once I got to know Madison better. Turns out the apple hadn't fallen far from the tree. One afternoon, I got a call from my bank. The manager sounded uneasy. He told me someone had come in attempting to co-sign a loan using my information, signature, and all. When he told me the name, I couldn't believe it. Denise. She hadn't just been helping her daughter. She'd been trying to commit outright fraud. The bank flagged it immediately, called me before processing anything, and within hours a police report was filed. Denise was officially charged with forgery. I shouldn't have been surprised, but I was. It was one thing for Madison to spin lies online, but to see her mom walking the same path, breaking the law to keep up the charade, was something else entirely. Meanwhile, Madison's crisis was snowballing. Her car, the one I'd stopped guaranteeing, was repossessed. She hadn't made a payment in months, and with no one backing her, the dealership swooped in. One day she was posting selfies behind the wheel, the next it was gone. Then came the apartment. I'd been the guarantor for her lease, but once I pulled out, the building gave her 30 days to find a replacement. Nobody with her credit history was stepping up. She got the eviction notice within weeks. But the real turning point wasn't material, it was digital. Screenshots started circulating, passed along to me by a mutual acquaintance. Messages from Madison to one of her friends. The restraining order will scare him into paying. He can't risk looking bad in court. That single line changed everything. She wasn't scared of me. She wasn't trying to protect herself. She'd filed the order as leverage. A bargaining chip. A way to force my hand. When those screenshots landed in my lawyer's inbox, he barely had to say a word. The case spoke for itself. Even her own attorney, Kenneth, finally saw it for what it was. Within a week, he dropped her as a client. But Madison wasn't done. She launched a GoFundMe. The headline read something like, "Survivor of Financial Abuse Starting Over." The description painted her as a woman who had escaped years of control, finally free but struggling to rebuild. For about a day, it looked like it might work. She raised $120. Then people started digging. Old posts surfaced, her bragging about "my man spoiling me," about never paying a bill in years, about shopping hauls and vacations she hadn't earned. The fundraiser was flagged for fraud and shut down almost overnight. Watching it all unravel, I wasn't celebrating. I wasn't even angry anymore. It felt inevitable. The lifestyle she'd been clinging to wasn't built on her own foundation, it was built on mine. Once I stepped away, the collapse was always going to happen. But what I hadn't expected was just how far her family would sink alongside her. The forgery charge against her mom made it clear this wasn't just Madison's behavior. It was learned. It was generational. And it was about to get even uglier. Just when I thought things couldn't get more tangled, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. When I answered, a steady older voice introduced himself. "This is Madison's dad." I froze for a second. I'd only met him briefly years back, and he'd always seemed distant, living in another state. But he didn't waste time. "Listen, son," he said, almost weary. "I know exactly what you're going through. Her mother pulled the same stunts on me during our divorce. False accusations, forgery, the works. Madison's a carbon copy. Do not cave. If you do, you'll never get your life back." There wasn't any anger in his tone, just experience. He wasn't calling to pick sides or defend her. He was calling to warn me. And for the first time, I felt like someone outside of my circle truly understood. His words stuck with me. By week 4, the eviction notice caught up with Madison. That day, she stormed into the lobby of my office building, screaming, pointing, telling anyone who would listen that I'd ruined her life. Security stopped her before she could reach me, and in the process, she violated the very restraining order she had filed against me. The same legal tool she'd used as leverage became her downfall. Police were called, and she was arrested right there in the lobby. The scene was almost surreal. It wasn't the kind of moment you celebrate. I didn't fist pump or feel vindicated. I just felt done, like the cycle had run its course, and there was nothing left but the inevitable consequences. But her mother wasn't ready to let go. Denise actually tried to spin the whole thing into a public spectacle. She set up what looked like a press conference in front of the courthouse steps, calling local reporters to talk about toxic financial control and abusive men who use money as a weapon. The problem? Reporters had done their homework. When they pressed her about her recent forgery charges, she snapped, called them biased, and stormed off. Someone caught the whole thing on video. Within hours, the clip went viral, not as advocacy, but as comedy. People memed it. Lawyers joked about it in forums. It backfired spectacularly. Meanwhile, Madison's world was shrinking. The friends who once clung to her rooftop brunches weren't lining up to help when the money dried up. Her GoFundMe had been exposed. Her car was gone. The apartment she flaunted was no longer hers. The narrative of being a survivor was collapsing because too much of her past was still online, contradicting every word. For me, those weeks felt like detox. Every time she spiraled further, I reminded myself, this isn't my problem anymore. For years, I was the one scrambling to cover, to fix, to clean up. Now, all I had to do was stand back. And yet, watching her unravel, I realized something important. She wasn't going to stop until she burned every bridge. The lifestyle she clung to wasn't about happiness or stability. It was about image, and she'd sacrifice anyone, even her own parents, to keep it alive. By the time she was escorted out of that lobby in handcuffs, the illusion was gone. The Madison I'd once loved wasn't there anymore. Or maybe she never was, and I just didn't want to see it. After the arrest, things went quiet for a while. Not just on her end, but inside me too. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was walking on eggshells. No surprise bills, no shouting matches, no late-night arguments about why I wasn't supportive enough. But Madison wasn't gone. Not really. She lingered in the background like static. I'd hear about her through mutual acquaintances, mostly people who couldn't resist sharing gossip. She's been couch hopping. She's back with her mom. She's working at a retail job now, but keeps posting like she's living the high life. At first, I ignored it. Then, one night, someone sent me screenshots of her latest posts. Madison was uploading old vacation photos, cropping me out, and captioning them with things like, "Independent women always bounce back," and "Never let a man control your worth." But the comments told another story. People were calling her out, asking how she could claim independence when everyone knew I'd funded those trips. A few even mentioned the forgery scandal with her mom. The tone had shifted. She wasn't getting sympathy anymore. She was getting exposed. And then came the texts. Not from her directly. She couldn't, because of the order, but from unknown numbers that were clearly her. The writing style was unmistakable. I never meant for it to go this far. You know I loved you, right? We can fix this. Please don't shut me out completely. I didn't respond. I forwarded everything to my lawyer. If she wanted to break her own walls, that was her problem. What hit me most wasn't anger. It was the regret woven between her words. For years, she treated me like a bottomless wallet. Now, stripped of the safety net, she sounded like someone realizing too late what she'd lost. Meanwhile, my own life was finally settling. I started picking up hobbies I'd put off forever. I bought a motorcycle I'd always dreamed about. I signed up for pottery classes, just because it felt good to do something creative with my hands. I reconnected with old friends without worrying about Madison finding a reason to sabotage the plans. The contrast was striking. While she scrambled to maintain appearances, I was rebuilding quietly, brick by brick, without the chaos. And the more I distanced myself, the clearer it became. Madison's downfall wasn't just about money. It was about choices. She had opportunity after opportunity to work, to save, to build something of her own. Instead, she gambled on manipulation. And now, she was living the consequences. Her regret might have been real, but it wasn't about me. It was about losing the comfort in the image. If I'd gone back, she would have slipped right into the same habits, the same cycle. For the first time in years, I didn't even feel tempted. It didn't surprise me when her lawyer called again. By then, months had passed since the restraining order first landed on my doorstep, and Madison's world looked nothing like it once had. Kenneth, the lawyer who dropped her before, was gone. This time, it was some new name, clearly just picking up her case for a fee. The tone was different, though. Less polished. More desperate. My client would like to dissolve the restraining order, he said. She feels it's unnecessary now and wishes to re-establish communication. I didn't even pause. No thanks, I told him. She said I was abusive. I wouldn't want to endanger her again. Silence on the other end. He cleared his throat and tried again, hinting that maybe she just wanted to rebuild trust or discuss financial matters. I cut him off. There's nothing to discuss. That was it. Conversation over. I later heard through a mutual friend that Madison had broken down in tears when she realized I wasn't coming back. She wasn't just asking to talk. She was begging to have me back in her orbit. Or, more accurately, to have my money back in her orbit. But it was too late. Now, she's living back in her mom's cramped one-bedroom apartment. Working retail. According to people who still follow her, she's already latching onto a new guy, someone younger, less established, probably easier to control. I almost pity him. Almost. As for me, my life has never been quieter. I took the $4,000 a month I used to bleed into her lifestyle and redirected it into myself. Investments. Travel. The motorcycle I always wanted. And those pottery classes? They turned out to be one of the best decisions I've made in years. There's something grounding about creating something tangible after years of feeling drained. The biggest surprise has been my stress levels. They dropped to zero once I stopped carrying the weight of someone else's endless demands. The quiet isn't lonely, it's peaceful. Looking back, the irony is hard to miss. Madison thought the restraining order would trap me, scare me into submission. Instead, it gave me exactly what I needed: freedom. No contact, no guilt trips, no manipulation. She tried to weaponize compliance, but in the end, compliance became my shield. I don't share this story to brag about her downfall. Truthfully, I take no joy in it. Watching someone spiral, even someone who wronged you, isn't satisfying. It's sad. But it's also a reminder. The lesson I walked away with is simple. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't anger or confrontation or trying to prove yourself right. Sometimes, the smartest revenge is silence. You let their choices speak louder than anything you could ever say. And that silence? It's louder than every screaming match we ever had. I appreciate you watching till the end. Hit that subscribe button and stay tuned for more content.